from board members? Very well. Remote participation. We have no remote participation this class. Very well. Next item on the agenda, item number 3. Have all committee members had an opportunity to review the April 21st, 2025 minutes, and are there any corrections, deletions, or additions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from April 21, 2025?
So move.
So moved and seconded.
Second.
Very well, thank you, sir. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect, the motion passed unanimously. Any committee members have any amendments for the agenda to be considered? Seeing none, we will close item 3B. Open public comment time. Open public comment time is a time where anyone who wishes to address the committee on any matter within a committee's authority is welcome to come forward. Please state your name, the locality you live, or the entity you represent. Is there anyone present who wishes to address the committee during open public comment time? Is there anyone online? Seeing none, we'll close item 3C. We'll move into the FY 2026 budget. Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you, Chair Davis. So, good morning, everyone. We're in our close quarters. We are coming to you today with a proposed balanced budget, and we'd like to walk you through the revenue and expense assumptions over these next few slides. There's a lot of detail behind these numbers, and I want to give you an opportunity to ask questions. As discussed in our previous meeting, the level of detail presented is to support a model where the committee can really focus on those high-level strategic decisions, in this case, the wage adjustment rate. So this is an area where we'd really appreciate your strategic guidance and discussion as we go through the budget. Revenue assumptions. Proposed revenue is 4.8 million. 68% of that figure represents federal funding, primarily transportation. 10% state, again, primarily transportation, but also our state appropriation. 18% local, which includes member dues and revenue from CVTA, and then 5% private funding, primarily Virginia Housing and FOLAR. Given our evolving federal policy, we've taken a more conservative approach to building the revenue model, which includes federal grants awarded and contracted, the VDOT PL and 5303 funding, as confirmed by our federal and state funding partners. 2 grants that we anticipate with 75 to 90% certainty that we'll receive, but these have not been formally awarded and contracted. These represent just 1% of total revenue. And then investment of discretionary funds in alignment with our key imperatives, specifically local planning assistance, regional indicators, and data projects. Proposed revenue excludes grant proposals submitted and awaiting confirmation, such as a $250,000 capacity grant to cover some of our planned technology and infrastructure investments, which we'll talk about a little bit later in expenses. And revenue also excludes renewals of active fiscal year 25 FEMA, NOAA, and EPA awards. A note about our fiscal year 25 projections on the budget in your hands. We wanted to provide a data point for comparison to that proposed fiscal year 26 budget, but please note that those fiscal year 25 projections on your paper will likely change given an anticipated drop in Q4 25 revenue due to vacation and holidays during the period. And we also anticipate an uptick in expenses as we delayed some payments on planned activities to ensure we're moving into Q4 in good standing.
Explain a little bit on delayed payments.
Yes, so there were some couple of purchases that we were planning, a couple laptops, some public engagement that we had pushed.
Delayed expenditures, no. Okay.
Yes, sorry, yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can you explain a little bit about the rationale of including the grants that are not, that even though they're 1%, why we decided to include that in it?
We felt pretty strongly about those 2 in particular, versus some of the other ones that we just don't have as much information on. I'm happy to let Martha speak to those.
Yeah, so the 2 are the septic and well assistance program that we've been talking with Virginia Department of Health. I know you're more familiar with that program, but Mr. Atkins and Mr. Davis, it's an invitation that we got from Virginia Department of Health to administer a program on their behalf. providing administrative support to identify vendors in the region who can assist homeowners with the replacement of their failing septic or well facilities. The program administrator at Virginia Department of Health informed me just this week that she's drafting the contract and it should be here within the next few days. And so we felt like, given the timing of this committee meeting and the budget coming before the full board in June, I would have that contract in hand by that time. The second grant is a project that we have done for a number of years now. You're familiar with Dr. Adhikari's work with the Virginia Chief of Police Association. And that's the evaluation of the administration of the naloxone.
How's that funded?
It's funded through the Virginia Chiefs of Police Association. And so we felt like, because it's not tied to federal dollars, it was also a very likely renewable project for us.
Perfect. So what I would recommend maybe is, if we, for the presentation for the full committee, if we include two grants, one state, one local.
Sure.
Just to
Okay.
might help people.
Yeah, thank you. And I will
Streamline the
say,
meeting.
the cell and septic,
Well, and septic.
well, thank you. Well and septic project originates from federal funding, but it's ARPA dollars that have been confirmed, I'll call it, with the State Department of Health. So we feel, so yeah, but that's a good tip. I like that suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Appreciate that suggestion. Oh, I like it. Sorry.
You do both.
Okay.
I do that.
Expenses were modeled through the lens of that lead key imperative, ensuring compliance and agency sustainability, particularly through financial integrity and investments in talent and technology. So over the last few months, I've been working closely with our leadership to understand and prioritize critical initiatives. While I know this committee has already expressed support for a new accounting and grants management system, going through this budget process absolutely validated earlier observations that our agency requires a more robust technology solution that can more effectively manage the complexities of our revenue sources, the timing of grants crossing fiscal years, and the conditions for grants requiring a match. As a note about that new system, we have scheduled a second deep dive demo for the new accounting system with the front runner vendor in a sandbox environment so that we can enter our grant information and accounting information and run reports in the system to confirm that it really will do everything our vendor says it will do. Back to the numbers. Not surprisingly, our staffing costs are the primary driver of the budget, making up 76% of total expenses, followed by technology at 14% and occupancy at 7%. These figures incorporate a proposed wage adjustment, which we'll discuss in a moment, a 3.5% increase to employer paid health insurance premiums, a 5% escalation in fees to our outsourced technology provider, as well as investment in technology best practices around security and efficiency. Our rent is also escalating at a planned rate according to the lease, but we're also being assessed a larger share of building operating expenses and taxes. I do want to take a few moments to focus on the topic of wage adjustments, which again is where we really appreciate your strategic guidance. Mr. Spoonhour had asked for benchmarking on this topic, and we've included a chart reflecting some of our member localities as well as the state wage adjustment. Pause for a minute there to let you take a look at that chart before I share more details on the modeling that we did.
So this is the lion's share of the discussion. I get that. Let me go back to the contractually. I get the rent increase, being assigned a larger portion of expenses. Is that codified in the lease? Question one. And what was the landlord's reason for that? Just the amount of use we have.
The lease prescribes the schedule for the allocation of the operating costs, and so as cleaning fees get negotiated, as utility usage changes in the building, as.
So we weren't given a larger percentage as a tenant.
Yeah, it's based on our leased space proportionate to the rest of the tenants in the building, and.
So it's still purported, we weren't given a larger proportion, just the whole dollar went up, but we weren't as an example, taking up 5%, somebody else was reduced 2 and 3 respectively, is that correct?
Well, over the time that we have moved, since we moved in, the tenancy mix in the building has changed. And so so there's sort of two parts to that question. When floor 2 was vacant until most recently, there was less cleaning and less utilization, and the spread of those costs were not based on that tenancy. When they moved in, those costs went up and the proportionality got adjusted because of that tenancy. So we're not being penalized for vacancy, but we do, the calculations change. And we've had both the commercial real estate review that as well as our attorney, just to verify that what is happening with the allocation of the operating costs is true to the lease agreement, and it is.
So essentially, it's OAR overhead.
Yes, and I will say the lease does include a cap, so we have the ability to model and budget based on the cap that exists, and so that's what we've modeled with this. So it's a variable cost, but it is capped.
Okay.
Does that
Fixed
answer your-
expense with a variable cost. Yeah, it does. So I guess now we go into this, and this is one thing.
So. Can you explain why, everybody should have gotten the 1.5% one-time bonus? Why is Goodson the only one that's called out for? It's showing as a wage adjustment that doesn't, that's not in their wages, that's not increasing their salaries, it's not a salary increase or COLA. It's a 3% COLA with the 1.5 state mandated. Unfunded mandate, may I add, for all those state delegates listening.
That may be my error then.
Okay.
That may be my misinterpretation. I apologize. So that is my error when I was interpreting what I was reading in the news. So I apologize.
No
So
worries.
this needs adjustment then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
State
you
that
for
1.5.
Yeah,
catching.
it should say 3, and then you can note the 1.5, but it's not an ongoing.
Yes, I knew it wasn't an ongoing. I think the 1.5 did not get applied to the other counties. You're right. But yes, I'm aware it's not ongoing. Okay, so we can
Looks like most
update
of the
that
counties are
for,
on 3. Seems to
Correct.
Be the average.
So the healthcare costs are always, so we're at 3.5 with this organization. Which is consistent, but
We
it's
didn't have an increase last year.
correct. So we didn't have an increase last year, so we kind of dodged a bullet with this organization. We've never dodged bullets. In our.
We've had an increase this year.
Y'all didn't in Goochland? Man, that's phenomenal.
We're a lot healthier.
Yeah.
We're outdoorsy kind of.
Well, since you've been on the board, so.
I used it all like a
Life is
year
getting
ago.
better. Yeah, like.
I used it all, but it's can't happen anymore.
But it was something that we talked about with our schools. And, nobody from my school division's here, but, we initially told these folks, hey, make sure you're watching, healthcare, let us know what the increase is. They send over their budget, and then they come back and said, like 3 weeks later, we forgot the $9 million increase in healthcare costs. We're like, how did you know what I mean? So there was some consternation there. So that, to me, that's always it's a variable cost, fixed expense, right? So, there's not much we can do. We had talked a little bit 2 or 3 years ago about searching for, different opportunities. We kind of formed a committee, and way I saw it was the only thing that really needed to be looked at was our health insurance. Maybe our auditors would have fallen under that review. So well, I don't like it. I got very little heartburn with the 3.5% of health, because it's gotta be provided. That's just the nature. That industry's going that way. But before we get into salaries, have we thought about, what we might look at with, there's some pool programs that we would qualify for, some captives. Maybe some opportunity to look at that, even if it's ancillary to say,
we are.
particularly pool or captives,
Yep. We are planning an analysis of our health benefits in the fall. We actually heard from a vendor a few months ago that wanted to rush a change for us going into this fiscal year, and we listened to his speech, but immediately, decided that we didn't want to push or rush anything like that. But that has led us to definitely consider what other options are out there. And so that's a planned initiative for the fall,
Okay. I
for
think
the
that's-
following fiscal year.
And
Yeah.
I think
This fall, following fiscal year budget.
Correct.
the challenge of the timing is, as a participant in the local choice, the Virginia's local choice program, we, I believe, are obligated to give notice of our intent to leave the program before we get the new rates. And so the fall time is the right time for us to do the analysis of alternatives, so that when we get the notice, we can make that decision in the spring, because the cycle goes too quickly, if that makes sense, this in the springtime to initiate that evaluation.
All right, thank you for that. I mean, any, y'all agree with that? I mean, as far as the healthcare, I mean, that's kind of.
So my experience, 3.5% is moderate, so
Right, we don't like it, but it's not,
yeah.
it's not offensive.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So we have modeled 3 wage adjustment scenarios, 0, 3, and 5%. Given the uncertainty in the grant proposals, not yet confirmed or awarded, staff does not believe it would be prudent at this time to implement a full 5%. So we'd like the committee to consider and discuss implementing 3% effective July 1, with a plan for staff to monitor outstanding proposals and come back to the committee later in the year as awards are confirmed. We'd also like to engage more of our staff in developing alternative funding sources, as the commission and this committee have talked about diversifying our funding streams. I'll pause there. Happy to answer any other questions about the modeling. The budget in front of you has the 3%
And
in the personnel line
in the
item.
personnel line, those funds are dependent on what?
Can you say a little more about what you mean?
What is the source?
Money come from.
Yeah,
The money's coming from federal, state, local, and private funding, so.
And
Which is federal.
they're the secured grants that we've incorporated in the section in the revenue.
Mhm.
I'll say the confidence interval that we have, excluding those 2 that Lauren mentioned, are 75% confident. The rest of them, unless there is a grant award that is literally withdrawn, they are as good as contracted awarded and contracted.
Okay.
So we didn't do any speculative prospective revenue, except for those 2 that we talked about. Which is why I think, sorry, Lauren, I think candidly, we would, maybe in other fiscal years, we might feel more confident about the 5% salary adjustment, knowing that we typically have new opportunities that come online. But given the uncertainty of the current environment, we felt like that was not an appropriate way to approach this fiscal year's budget. And so the 3% is the solid, really, I think, proved supported by the revenue that we have in hand. Mr. Davis, if I will, when I spoke to you last week, that was prior to receiving the contract from Virginia Housing for a $1.2 million 2-year grant. And so the scenarios that I sort of alluded to last week were resolved. Yes, but I was very stressed about, were essentially resolved because we got that other contract literally in my inbox on Monday.
So, okay, good. Thank you. It was just a few seconds to
Of course.
working our desk.
Well, Mr. Davis is doing that. I'm supportive of the 3%. I think we just always need to understand that as we increase our costs, our billable rate, our customers get less. Because it costs them more to do business with us. So I think being prudent like this, I think is being good stewards.
We heard that feedback from you in the last finance committee meeting, so we're trying to take that advice. Yeah, so thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Kumar is putting on the screen, one of those Sankey diagrams with the different sources of revenue. This is the fiscal year 26 budget. Without the numbers on it, but you can see the sources and the expenses based on those thickness of the lines.
Okay, so I'm seeing the FY projection at 3.3. I'm looking at the proposed budget, 26. That's 365.
Know why that, why,
Well, I'm seeing I'm seeing a total variance now, that's what my calculator tells me too. So I'm going into. All right, so data, we've got 500,000 in data. What do we mean by data?
So that is our data team. So we have a data team. Let me take a step back. The categories, those columns that you're seeing, some of those expenses,
And that's where I was going.
yes, some of those expenses will be covered by, say, transportation funding. This group knows we've got some limitations with our current system QuickBooks, so a lot of our analysis and projections we're doing in spreadsheets and QuickBooks, and so we used the best information we had to slice and dice. Some of these gets a little,
Yeah, and maybe
Yeah.
we need to, I'm just thinking under the current circumstances, which are not dissimilar to, decades prior, federal funding is never 100% guaranteed. Commonwealth Virginia, these are state funding, in the numbers that were initially proposed. But I think maybe a little bit more slicing and dicing as far as a breakdown. So obviously column 3 with CD, no, column 1, sorry, I think the glasses back on, column 1. Column 3, transportation, maybe when we go to the full commission, we have something prepared if we have to break those down just a little bit more, because just saying that, you're right, there's some crossover. But since we're talking so in depth about our budget, revenue projections, maybe expenditure adjustments, we might want to have that in our back pocket to break those down a little bit, so folks know that, we're not, we're not 4 columns with column 4 being a subset of 3. I mean,
okay,
pretty complex in what we do, where we have to put money, and then, very little discretion for us sometimes, we have to assign, so that's just a thought.
so better match.
Yeah, I think so, just,
Funding.
with just an explanation,
Yep.
yeah, under the circumstances, so, we've got. So. So office expenses, is that some of the adjustments there?
So office expenses had some pass-through expenses in fiscal year 25. So these are sort of those direct expenses where we might be paying a contractor. We wanted to be thoughtful about how we reflected the 26 pass-through expenses for grants that we may not have awarded yet. So in some ways, we're not comparing apples to apples on an item like that, because we had grant funding in 25 with direct expenses in 25 that we may not have that same
Yeah,
type of expense
right, so.
in 26.
Yeah, we can come down 90%. Okay, all right, no, I know it is the case, we get the full commission to somebody, okay.
Yeah.
Just two.
Yeah, please, yes, sir.
Just for clarity's sake, just to make sure we get it on the table. When you're looking at personnel, if you look at the notes, this is a 3% wage adjusted model plus VRS and payroll taxes. Could you just verify that the VRS not adding an additional 3%, but it just covers the cost of that?
It's the compound of
Okay.
the same retirement rate on top of a 3% wage increase, right?
Okay.
So as wages go up, that dollar goes up for retirement, even though the rate stays the same.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm gonna ask a really weird question, but I'll just bear with me. So the group that's here today, do they pay for that? For the use of the conference room?
they do not, we do not charge currently for anybody to use our space. We
Is-
limit those reservations to partners only.
I think that's great. I think it would be awesome, maybe going forward, if we think of, what would that rate be? And we're sort of helping the region out in kind by our national office space. Maybe I'd be able to participate in that amazing breakfast that's, I keep smelling down there. Sausage and bacon.
So when the finance committee for CDTA gets a bill for the meetings.
No, I didn't, no, it's not a bill. It's not a bill at all. It's
I
just,
don't disagree. Yeah, I think there's something to be said. No, and I said that.
Well, especially-
Yes, but yeah,
when I was on the committee to help decide where we're moving, this was
Yeah.
a very expensive space that we said is gonna benefit the region. I think we should be showing how it's,
Yeah.
hey, we're saving the region $30,000 this year, that they don't have to use out of their budget.
sure. Yeah,
That's a great
that is
idea.
absolutely 100% you can. And yeah, we're not getting, one, I don't know if it uses any postage charge, but it does kind of bring some understanding, I think. An ancillary or residual benefit.
Yeah.
Folks say, hey, I was down at PlanRVA, hey, I was down at PlanRVA. Yeah, I mean, that.
Oh, I think it's great.
Mr. Atkins, you wanna opine on wages? Do you have?
No, I think, a zero would not be amenable at all, and I think you're pushing that envelope a little bit at 5. So, the only thing I think, I know you're working on a continuity plan too. So, as long as we have that in place with understanding, this group of projections, when, we're on a roller coaster. Mhm.
I'm amenable to 3 as well, with associated costs, yeah, of course. But, yeah, I think 3% is, so. I'm fine with that.
And you want to retain,
Absolutely.
So,
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can I do maybe like 2 points of order then? I think,
Which would be, that turned into 5,
no, I think it's just you.
just
I
to,
do
with
think
some
it's just
subsets
you.
and some sections.
No,
Okay, well, then sure.
you all have made some suggestions today about how we can improve the presentation of this content. And so I want to be thoughtful about how we can do that and ideally achieve a recommendation from this committee in the form of a motion to the board for June 12th. So I think the things that you're suggesting are improvements to the presentation materials and the slides and some of the layout, but the substance of the budget that we've presented doesn't change with the recommendation.
Absolutely.
that's what I'm.
Yeah.
So I've noted the recommendation about just some better clarity about those 2 prospective
Wording,
grants.
yeah.
I don't even know if it's clarity. I mean, I think it's, the information's there. It's just maybe bringing it up a little bit, because I don't want to seem as if it's unclear. It's just wasn't included, but it's not intentionally left out. I was like, at this time, they depend. Budgets, depending on what happens at what time, I mean, are very different. If you go back and look at board presentations for the localities in 2012 and 2013, they looked very different because there were certain things we were looking at. So I'm just funny about the words. Yeah, clarity's fine, I think internally,
Okay.
but I don't think there's anything that's unclear. Maybe just a few more data points.
Okay.
Okay.
And then similar to the local wage adjustment chart, that was another thing that we discussed. The budget layout, making sure that the alignment of the overlapping source to benefit program area is
Yeah, and should anything happen, available, right, because should anything happen and then funding change, because we have such a dynamic way of funding this organization. That should anything change, it's not something that the commission hasn't seen to recognize it until the forefront. Yeah. So we'll see. And things are settling a little bit right now, and well, I'm saying we may not like the outcome, don't get me wrong, but I mean, at our level, we have more clarity, so if something's not coming in. Doesn't mean I'm happy with the matter, but it is settled. It's not, I know what I'm dealing with. You might be a little bit different, understand from your funding sources. No, I do. I mean, I appreciate it. Yeah, so, I mean, what is it? I mean, it's a settled matter. Help's not coming, right? It's like, okay, I don't like that, but, we're all in that same, but what I do, when I say that respectfully is, we have certain things that are no longer, bear with me, speculative. Like in our locality, it's not speculative anymore, the matter's been settled and it is what it is. That doesn't mean it provides comfort, but it gives us something to work with. I think Charles said he has a few things more than we do that are unsettled at this time.
But
Yeah.
positive growth though.
But yeah, well, I say, just from some of your.
Potential.
Yeah, sure, okay. Were those your 2 points?
That was it.
That was it? You stuck to 2 points.
I want to commend you on your hard work and energy that you put towards these things, especially looking at the need for a staff and them being rewarded in their work and in their contribution. And in particular, dealing with the uncertainty of funds, and please lock in your continuity plan for changes.
Thank you.
So I think we'd be looking for a motion for the committee to recommend approval of the budget.
I think the chair is looking at reevaluating his career for construction.
Trying to think what somebody, read the motion, proposed motion, what are you saying? What do we have? Go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I approve that we recommend the 2026 operating budget with the proposed changes to the presentation as recommended.
That's good enough for me. Is there a second?
It's definitely.
There's a motion for a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion passes. Let the record reflect, motion passed unanimously. We'll send that to the full commission. Yeah, okay. Any further discussion on any matters?
Just one
Yeah.
matter which doesn't relate to the budget per se. Where are we with our understanding with our vendors if we do run into funding issues as relates to contracts that we have?
Typically, we have a clause in our contracts, so, big agreements that are ongoing agreements would be the lease and our managed services for technology. Both of those agreements have a clause that does, speak to non-appropriation of funds, so should there be some sort of major change in how the funding is provided to this agency, we have an out clause. And that provision is incorporated into our other types of vendor agreements that come more on a project basis. So if we hire, in this particular budget, for example, we've got money set aside to update the travel demand model for the NPO. And so hiring a consultant to support that work would be contingent upon dollars being available, and the out clause in that contract would be included to be able to exit that contract should we, for some reason, not be able to fulfill the terms of that.
And I do think that we wanna have an update at the on the recommendation of Finance Committee. Maybe have someone make that statement,
Okay.
because that was brought up and Mr. Atkins wasn't present one time. I mentioned what you talked to me about, and so I appreciate you bringing it back up. But I think we do need to make that statement so folks know how we're handling that.
I'll speak
And
to
you were
Mr. Gregory,
Greg,
yeah, to, is that?
Yep, that's what I was saying. Yep, thank you. Okay, I think that's the only thing I want to cover was that last part. I think that motion was good. Anything else? Any further discussion? Anything from committee members? Anything from staff? Very well.